Hi guys, it's Belle here and I'm coming on with a little bit of a different video. I'm hoping to do these once a month, normally right at the end of a month or the start of a new month. Some of you may remember that in a different video I'd said that there was something I wanted to try, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it, or some of you do. I'm sure not everyone will, but I really want to make these videos, so that's what I'm going to do for the foreseeable future. So many of you will know I love to read, so I decided once a month I'm going to share with you my reading wrap up for the month. So this is February's reading wrap up. So I will be doing a little bit of simple crafting in the background, depending on the books, and it's just going to be some gentle crafting as I talk to you about my reading wrap up. Do not worry, this channel is not changing to a reading channel. This is a craft channel. This is what it is, but I really want to share with you guys my reading, and grab something to drink and maybe a snack, because this could be a long one, because I did read 13 books in February, and I'm still not 100%, but I really want to get this done. So firstly, let me say that I also took part in a readathon called Forensic February, hosted by Chloe Reads Books. She has, I think, a book club called Chloe's Crime Scene Corner. I'm not part of that. I just love doing a readathon. I am very goal orientated, and that includes in my reading. So if I can do readathons or little challenges through a month that go alongside my reading, I just really enjoy that too. So some of the books will relate to this. I will leave the link to Chloe's YouTube down below if you are a reader and interested. I did a mix. I didn't go for just crime or mystery and stuff. So let's get started. So the first book I finished was called Darkwood, and it's part of it's the first in the Darkwood series by Gabby Hutchinson. I will leave images of the books that I don't have briefly here. And this was for one of the Forensic February prompts. This I used for the book of under 300 pages. Time is running out because it was. And this is more of a children's book. It was very, very good. I gave it 3.75. I am going to be continuing on in the series. And it is magical kind of realism mixed with fairy tale. We are in a place, doesn't really say where, we just know the Darkwood is there. We are in a place where magic is outlawed, and things like girls doing maths is outlawed too. And basically the huntsmen of Snow White fame, the huntsmen are this group of people who are hunting down anyone who is breaking their laws. And the Darkwood is this scary place that everyone says don't go to. It's got trolls and all sorts of creatures in it. And we start at this little village where one of the girls, Gretel, they think she's a witch and they're trying to hunt her. It's very good. The author of this series apparently loves Terry Pratchett, and I could definitely see that in the book. The sense of humour was my sense of humour. There is a witch in this that everything she touches turns into baked goods, which is not only hilarious but delicious. And there's a talking spider, and Snow White is nothing at all like the Snow White of story. The dwarfs are also hilarious. We have the bin men, and we never know what the bin men are, but everything in the Darkwood is scared of the bin men. And basically they're trying to save the Darkwood and save the village. It's a very good book. I enjoyed it. It's funny. It's good for kids if your kids like fairy tales and all that kind of thing. There's nothing particularly scary or gory. As I said, I gave it 3.75. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And that was my first read of February. Then my next read was Silence is Fallen, which is book 10 in the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. I gave this 4.5. Again, an image. I am not kidding you when I say that the Mercy Thompson series is one of my all-time favourite paranormal series out there. I love this series so much. Mercy is mixed Native American, and she is what is classified as a walker. She can shift into a coyote. And this is book 10, so there's not much I can tell you about it, but I will say this is one of my favourite. This series has werewolves, witches, ogres, goblins, the fae in all its multitude, wizards, zombies, vampires. I mean, you name it, this series practically has it. And I love Mercy. She's a mechanic. She's tough. She has an amazing sense of morality and what is right and what is wrong. And even though that often endangers her and things like that, she just has this inner sense of what you should do for others. And I love that about her. I particularly loved this book. Again, I can't tell you too much. It's book 10 in a series, but this one was the first book set outside of the area they live in North America. And this was actually set in Europe. Mercy does get kidnapped, and at first she ends up in Italy. And Italy is one of my favourite countries. I've visited it several times, different areas. So that was brilliant. And then the majority of the book takes place in Prague, another place that I have visited that I absolutely loved, and I recognised many of the places mentioned in the book. And one of the things I loved about this particular book was that Mercy is she's basically on her own for, I would say, 4/5 of the book. She's on her own. Her allies and the people she's normally with are trying to track her down. And so for the first time ever, we get a dual narrative between Mercy and the group that are trying to find her, which we never have before. We're also in the mind of another main character who's linked to Mercy in a way that I don't want to give anything away, spoilers. And we've never had that before. And we also have a time difference. So we have the time Mercy's in and the time that the other people who are trying to find her are in. And I loved it. I loved the story relating to Prague. I loved Mercy being by herself. I loved the little twists. I loved getting to be in Europe, which is always beautiful. And I loved all of that. So, yeah, this is one of my favourite series of all time. I had read up to book 8, I want to say, in this series when it had originally come out. It's still coming out. I think a book may be coming out later this year. But I had never read past that. So not only did I start a reread, but I am now up to, well, actually, I've already finished book 11 because I've already finished March's one. I love these books. I could sit and read these books back to back with no other book in between. Everything in these. Some books are better than others. This is definitely one of my favourite. Silence is Fallen. So check that out. All books will be linked down below as well. Then I listened to We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. I gave this a 4. I am a huge fan of the Thursday Murder Club series. Huge fan of that book series. And so when I heard he was coming out with a new series, I was like, okay, let me see what I think of this one. Let's see if I enjoy it or not. I gave it a 4. It was good. It was okay. Richard Osman, I like his writing. So that's good, you know. But if I'm honest, this does not live up to the Thursday Murder Club for me. We have a daughter-in-law and a father-in-law who the daughter-in-law ends up needing the father-in-law, who's an ex-police detective's help. She's on the run. She's being framed for murders. And whilst on the run with another character who is amazing, I think she's called Ruby. She's this really older film star kind of character who is hilarious. Whilst on the run and trying to solve all that, she's also just, you know, her father-in-law is dealing with grief. I would say grief is a huge theme in the series, in this book. We Solve Murders. Huge theme in the book. And that was dealt with so well. I loved that aspect of it. I feel like the characters weren't as interesting. I didn't connect to them as well as the Thursday Murder Club. I am also not one for guns and drugs and running and crime bosses, and I know some of those are themes in the Thursday Murder Club, but they're not the main thing that gets my attention. So yeah, that wasn't mine. It was fun. They ended up in Ireland at some point. But in all honesty, guys, I will continue reading this series, but it's not one that I'm going to add to my bookshelves. I will probably listen to them or read them as they come out. I won't go out of my way to buy them like I did the Thursday Murder Club. It was good. It was fine. I think Ruby saved the book, if I'm honest. I think it'd be a bit bland without her in it. So there we go. So the next book, which was for another one of the Forensic February prompts, which was the romance subplot, I read A Good Day to Pie by Misha Popp. And this is book 2 in the Pies Before Guys mysteries. Now, I will say, I love this series. It's fast becoming a favourite kind of fun series. It is classed as a cosy mystery, but I would say that some of the subject matter pushes it slightly, really to the edge of the idea of what a cosy mystery is, even though it's classed as that. So imagine Dexter, the show Dexter, but as someone who bakes pies. So the main character in this, her family have this long history of magic. They can infuse things with magic, but the things that they can infuse differ from person to person. So her grandmother could stitch magic into clothes. Her mother could put magic into hairstyles. She can bake magic into pies. And what she does is she has her normal business where she makes pies. And she has a little dog as well who is super cute. And then she also makes special pies that women who are in very difficult situations, you know, I'm not going to go into details, but please check trigger warnings for this series. Women who have experienced certain things or are going through certain things basically can reach out to her and she will make a special pie to gift to the man in their life that is causing them the pain and hurt. And the magic of these pies is that the pie itself can't hurt anyone else. Anyone else could take a bite out of the exact same pie and they'll be fine. And actually the magic sort of works that if there is any chance of the man being redeemed, it'll help him be redeemed rather than kill him. So she is a very ambiguous main character, morally ambiguous, morally grey. I love her. I think she's funny, but just be aware of that going into this, that she does make murder pies. And in this particular one, I love this one. Like I said, I gave it a 4, but I've been wondering about putting it up. In this particular one, she gets a place on the American version of the British Bake Off baking show. And what I loved is this is kind of what they call, what's it called? Closed circle, like a locked room mystery. They all go, all the contestants, including her, to this beautiful house, and they have their phones removed from them and no access to computers. And they are basically told once a day or every few days you can have maybe 5 minutes on your phone if you need it, but it's under supervision. And that means that you get that golden age feel of the crime, because there are no telephones you can suddenly just phone someone with, which I love. I really love that idea. And then a death happens to begin with, and then a specific murder happens, and then it turns out the other one was murder too. It's but it was fun. I loved. Now I can see that a lot of people's complaints of this would be that, oh dear, it would be that it felt more like a baking book than an actual murder mystery, because at least half of the book, I need to clean that middle bit, at least half of the book is the baking show. I personally don't mind that. I love the Great British Bake Off, and personally I am all for lots of descriptions of food. If you love your food, especially your sweet treats and your breads, this book will make you hungry. There are secret passages, there are interesting characters, and because they can't leave the area, and because they are trapped in this house, with no access to working out someone's secrets or something by looking it up, it's just fascinating. And this is not a spoiler because it is on the blurb, but one of the people who dies is actually someone that she has been paid to kill with a pie once the show is done. So that adds another twist to it, because she's trying to work out, she knows obviously some of his secrets, so she's trying to work out and doesn't want to be found out, and trying to work out if someone has set her up and stuff. So it is a really good, fun read. There's only 3 books out at the moment. And I'm flying through the series. But as I said, if you are thinking this is just a cozy mystery, it's not. There is a lot more. There are some themes dealt with in this series of books that, I would not class as cozy. Nothing really happens on page, but there is descriptions of certain things. And, So that was A Good Day to Pie by Misha Popp. Honestly, the food in this and the Great British Bake Off aspect just made this a winning kind of book for me personally. Okay, so the next one again worked for one of the prompts of the Forensic Readathon, a book with a villain, wherever that one was, and down here, and it was Murder on the Links by Agatha Christie. It is the 3rd No, it's not. It's the second book in the Poirot series. There is some debate whether Poirot Investigates comes before Murder on the Links. Thing is, I go in publication order. Oh, and I have the book. I go in publication order. And this book was published before Poirot Investigates. So to me, this is always book 2. That's it. That's how I go. You're not going to hear any different about it. That's me. If you do not know, I am a humongous Agatha Christie fan. She's one of my favourite authors of all time. I have read all of her work, except under her name, Mary something or other, Western Coat. I have read all of her Miss Marple, Poirot, standalone, all of her work, and I reread it constantly. The other year I did a whole reread of the Miss Marple series, and this year I've decided to reread Poirot. Poirot was always my favourite, more than Miss Marple, although as I'm getting older that's changing a little bit. I love Poirot. I kind of identify with him in many, many ways. In this one, Poirot receives a letter from this man in France who says that he feels threatened, that his life's being threatened. Can Poirot come and investigate? And by the time Poirot and Hastings, his friend, get there, the man is dead. And obviously Poirot then investigates what's happened. What I love, this book, I would only give a 3.75. It's not one of my favourite Poirots. But what I do love about this book, there are lots of twists and turns. So if you are new to this, obviously there's lots of twists and turns and you would probably rate it higher. I have reread this probably 3 times. It's not my most reread of the Poirots, but if I reread the series, the whole of the series, obviously I reread this. Some books I've read 10 times because they're just favourites. And what I love particularly about this book is always the banter between Poirot and Hastings. I mean, I just love the pair of them and their very strange dynamic. But also there is a French detective in here who is very much of the modern persuasion, and he is finding evidence everywhere. You know, that part of a footprint, the match over there. And Poirot, being arrogant as he is, always says that the little grey cells solve crimes better than actual evidence, which obviously in today's society would not be acceptable, but it's Poirot. And he's pointing out all the way through, they've got a bet on, I think it's for £5, they've got a bet on of who's going to solve this murder. And all the way through, he's like, oh, well, it's so funny you found that piece of evidence, but wouldn't you have also expected to find this with it? Why is it just that one piece? Does that not make you suspicious? And the French detective's like, oh, you're just old-fashioned. You don't know what you're talking about. And Poirot's like, okay. And obviously, while all this is happening, Hastings is falling in love left, right and centre, because every time he sees a beautiful woman, Hastings falls head over heels. And in one particular incident, Hastings says, oh, did you see that goddess over there, Poirot? And Poirot sort of says, I didn't see a goddess, my friend. I saw a woman with anxious eyes. And there's always that, you know, Hastings is rushing in to save any woman who looks halfway beautiful. And Poirot is much more like, oh, my dear friend, you know, stop getting caught up in the pretty face. And I just love that, like I'm smiling as I'm talking about it, that there are twists and turns of the murder and there's an older case involved, and it's very good. It's a very good, I'm almost talking myself into making it a 4. It's a very, very good book. As I said, this is book 2. I will be rereading, so every month you will see a Poirot on here. Yeah, I just really enjoy it. And obviously Poirot wins the bet. So, you know, a little £5 note turns up at the end of the book. So that was that one for Villain. Sorry, knocked you. And the next book, which again was for another Forensic February, and it was for Weapon on the cover, which I believe was my first role. And that is I Shall Wear Midnight by Terry Pratchett. Now, this is book 38. I think there's 41. Now, I'd never read Terry Pratchett until a couple of years ago when I joined in with the Around the Discworld in 800 Days, hosted by Win at Literary Diversions. Again, I will leave their channel linked down below. They love Terry Pratchett, reread him constantly. I'd never read him before. Shocking, considering how much I've read. And the fact that I love fantasy and sci-fi and all that kind of good stuff. To not have read Terry Pratchett just seems crazy. But this is book 38. Now, I took a little gap from Terry Pratchett about 4 months into the end of last year, about probably September time, because basically I had been reading 2 Terry Pratchetts a month for over a year and a bit, and it was getting seasonal. I'm quite a seasonal reader. I wanted to read autumn, I wanted to read spooky, and then I wanted to read Christmas, and the Terry Pratchett books that were to be read at that time did not link to any of those, and I needed a break. So there is another Terry Pratchett that I read in February that goes even further back than this one, but this is part of the Tiffany Aching series. If you do not know, Terry Pratchett can be read in chronological order, publication order, not chronological, publication order, which is what we've been doing in Around the Discworld in 800 Days, which is finished. It's over with now. I'm behind. I'm still finishing the series. Or it can be broken into subsections, which are the Guards books, the Witches books, the Tiffany Aching, the Deaf books. There's a few standalones. I particularly love the Witches, the Deaf, funny enough, the Guards, and the Tiffany Aching. Now, these are, the Tiffany Aching book are published as for children, for younger readers. I would say, guys, this particular book, not for younger readers at all. The first chapter in this book took me by surprise. When we first meet Tiffany, she's 9 years old in the early books. I think there's one more in the Tiffany Aching series. By this point, she's almost 16, and they have been more childlike in the other books. This is not. Please check trigger warnings. There is some very upsetting subject matter at the start of this book that I love Tiffany Aching. I normally pick her up and think, oh my God, I'm going to have the best time and it'll really relax me. This book made me cry. I gave it 5 stars. And yeah, I was shocked. We also deal a lot with the idea of hatred and bigotry and othering in this. Terry Pratchett is brilliant at doing social commentary with humour, and half the time you don't realise always what you're reading about until suddenly something clicks and you go, oh, that's quite a deep thought. And the way he deals with it in this book is that the witches, sort of this ancient thing, has been brought back and is turning people ugly, like bringing their least attractive kind of traits out to the open and turning them against others. And at this point, it's the witches. And it is all about that othering and about how those in society who don't quite fit in, how it's quite easy to gang up on them and things like that. It's very, it's a lot of subject matter that, is hard hitting. Please do check trigger warnings. I would not give this to a book to a child under 14. I just wouldn't. Although I probably would have read it if I'd known. I mean, I read Handmaid's Tale at the age of 12. I remember the librarian, when I handed it back in, going, I don't think this is for you. By that time, I'd already read it. So there we go. But yes, but they have in here the Knack McFeagles, who are obviously based on ancient Celts, Scottish, Irish Celts. They are little blue men, and they are all men except one. They have red, crazy hair. They wear kilts. They will fight anything and everything, including themselves, if there's nothing to fight. There is never an instance with a Knack McFeagle on the page that I do not laugh. I mean, like to the point where I am sometimes sobbing. I absolutely adore them. They're my favourite, probably one of my favourite characters in the whole of the Discworld. And my other half can always tell when I'm reading a Tiffany Aching, because I'll be laughing the whole time and then he'll be like, what's funny? And then I'll tell him and he will find it funny, but he's not in the world with the Knack McFeagles. Oh my gosh, I love these guys. Like, they can't pass a pub without both getting into a fight and drinking the place dry, and yet they are so loyal. They wouldn't like you saying that though. And oh my gosh, I love them. There's a talking toad. There's some cameos of some of my favourite characters like Nanny Ogg, Margaret, obviously Granny Weatherwax, and a whole new witch from Ankh-Morpork, which I just feel like Ankh-Morpork is a place that I've actually visited now, although I never would. But it feels like coming home now reading these books. But this got a 5, but yes. And funny enough, after finishing that one, I then read Thud, which is also in the Discworld, but it's book 34. And it's one of the books that I had started, but just could not get into when I made my mind up to actually not continue, to take a bit of a break from the Discworld for a little while. And Thud is completely different. It is set in Ankh-Morpork for the majority of it. And it is, I think, part of the guards section. They've got a vampire on the guards now, and everyone's up in arms literally about it, because no one wants a vampire on there. And it's all about this old battle of Coombe Valley, and there's trolls and dwarfs are fighting each other, and all sorts is going on. And do you know what? I gave Thud a 3.75. It's not one of my favourite of the Discworld, but the scenes with Sam Vines, who's the head of the guards, and something to do with his personal life, which again, I don't want to give spoilers. Oh, they made me a bit emotional, I have to be honest. I have fallen in love with the Discworld. I will be rereading the Discworld as soon as I finish, which I've only got a few books left. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. I feel sad that there'll never be a new Discworld for me to read. But I also want to revisit my favourite Discworld books, and I want to read them in order of the books now. I want to read like all the Deaf ones together, and I want to read all the Tiffany Acham ones back to back. So I'm actually excited about that. But I have such a soft spot in my heart for Sam Vimes and his guards, even though they're changing over the years and Sam Vimes is not happy about it. I have such a soft spot for him. So yeah, I finished Thud. That was a 3.75. It was fun. It was a Discworld book. I read it. There was some good bits in there. Like I said, again, some social commentary and all that kind of thing. And yeah, it was just a really good book and good read. I'm glad I finally have gone back and now I'm caught up. The next book was also for the Forensic February, and this was for Scene Recommended. And that was, have I got it here? I do, so let me grab it. That was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Now, a few years ago, everyone went crazy for Circe by Madeline Miller. I have to admit, I really enjoyed Circe by Madeline Miller, but it was not my favourite. I much preferred 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes and Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. If you don't know, Madeline Miller writes Greek myth retellings. I love Greek myth retellings. I grew up part of my childhood in Cyprus. I played in the Temple of Apollo. Like, Greek myth was everywhere. And I particularly love feminist Greek myth retellings. This is not a feminist Greek myth retelling, and I think that's part of why my enjoyment was lacking. I did give it a 4. It's Madeline Miller. It is beautifully written. If you do not know, it is about Achilles, who is kind of a demigod. His mother is part of the god creatures, you know. I can't remember what she is. I think she might be a sea nymph or something. And his friendship with Patroclus. And this takes us from Patroclus's, because it's mainly from his point of view, Patroclus's childhood up until Troy and what happens at Troy. If you don't know, I'm not going to spoil that for you, so don't worry. But I do know, I've read a lot of Greek myth retelling, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. And this is an area I know quite a bit about, so obviously I knew what was going to happen. And this takes the route of, there has always been in mythology the fact that Patroclus and Achilles were very good friends, like the best of friends. And some people have read into that something other, and who knows, one way or the other, but this definitely goes down the route of them being more than friends. And I wish I could like this more, but I did not like Achilles. He was arrogant. He never changed. He never grew as a person. And Patroclus, for 2/3 of this book, was so annoying because all he saw was Achilles as this amazing force of nature and could do no wrong, which is beyond. And you kind of want Patroclus to not be such of a pushover. And then they meet Briseis at Troy because she has been captured, and I liked that storyline. That was something different. Normally it is that she gets taken by Achilles, like given to Achilles as spoil of war, but the other king wants her, and that causes all this friction and leads to certain things happening during the Trojan War. Again, don't want to spoil anything, but this takes a different look. This takes a look at Patroclus saying, you take her because she's not going to be treated well. And her and Patroclus have this friendship develop that this book suggests that Briseis might want more from Patroclus than he's able to give her, but that they are close. And anyway, it was okay. The early part of the books with Patroclus, didn't feel any connection to him. I didn't feel any connection to Achilles. I liked hearing about, is it Chiron, who is someone who trained Hercules and that, who trains these demigod sons to fight. I enjoyed that bit, but and most of the action then takes part at Troy, which again, I knew how it was going to head. So there wasn't anything that really, it was good. It was well written, but I have to admit, for a book to get a 5 for me, it has to have an emotional response. And I have to admit, the final chapter in this book did have me tear up, and I was not expecting that. But, it's good. It's fine. I should know better than to read a book that the majority of the book is focused on 2 male heroes. It's not my thing. Although saying that, I read Hercules last year, and that book has stayed with me. It's really stayed in my brain. So there are exceptions to the rule. I'm glad I got to read it because it's been on my TBR for a long time, ever since reading Circe. But I don't see what everyone else is talking about. I certainly don't think it's captivating and hard to put down. It really wasn't. But it got a 4. It's well written. It's interesting. If you're interested in Greek mythology, I would recommend that, if that's something you're into. And then I read Hems and Homicide by Elizabeth Penney, and it's part of the Apron Shop Cozy Mystery series. Now, I love a good cozy mystery. I'm going to be honest, guys, sometimes when your brain is full, all I want is to read a cozy mystery. I love mystery books. I love murder mysteries, but I don't like anything too dark. So cozy mysteries are my thing. I think of them as bubblegum from the brain. I just really enjoy them. I can fly through them really quickly. And this was a new author to me. I don't think I've read Elizabeth Penney before, but I might have done. And Hems and Homicide was okay. I don't think I'll be continuing the series, but it is based around this young woman who comes back. Her grandfather has passed away, and she's come back to help her grandmother, both with grief and just they open a shop. They open, funny enough, an apron shop. And in this one, they're trying to get the shop opened when a dead body is found in the shop, and the shop's not even open yet. And this dead body goes back to a previous crime from the 60s or 70s. And it kind of goes from there. And it was okay. I can't say it's the most engaging mystery that I've ever read. And I kind of worked out part of it. But part of what annoyed me was the ending. There was like this little bit of a twist. that just didn't work for me. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was needed, and I felt it was thrown in there just to be another twist for people to read. So I think I ended up giving it a 3. I was humming and hawing around the 2.75, but there was nothing I actively disliked or offended me. So a 3 is good. And I'll have to be honest, when people say 3, often that comes across as negative. I think 3's a good a good rating. It basically means it was a book and I enjoyed it. And at the end of the day, I feel like books are there to be enjoyed for the most part. Some are there to teach us things, but we need to enjoy our books. So I'm so sorry if you can hear noise in the background. My neighbours are playing their whatever they're playing. So a 3 for me, especially of a cozy mystery, is actually a really good mark. But yeah, this is not one I'm going to be continuing. It's not, I just didn't get pulled in by the characters. So we'll move on from there. Then I read, which was probably my favourite read of the whole month, other than the Tiffany Aiken, was The Good Immigrant by Nikesh Shukla. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I apologise if I'm not. This was non-fiction, and it was 22 stories. It's been a few weeks and I've been ill in between, and it is people in their own words. So I highly recommend the audiobook for this, talking about what it's like being an immigrant in Britain, in England, and the different each of the stories had a different point of view. One was about language, and I completely, like, this was something I already knew, but it just really brought home for me the importance of learning the language of other people rather than just co-opting it. So they were talking about things like that we say chai tea when chai actually means tea, or we say naan bread when naan actually means bread. You know, it really brought home that. But it was different things, colour and names, and it was a fascinating read. It was educational. It made me think. It made me emotional. It was really, really, really good. I highly, highly recommend it. And I highly recommend, as I said, listening to the audiobook if you can get a hold of it. I don't have a copy of this. I borrowed it from my library, but it is a book that I am highly considering buying so that I can reread it, go over it, highlight it, things like that. Not actually highlight. I don't draw in my books. But to really just spend more time with these stories. Some of them, as with everything, are better than others, but I still highly recommend The Good Immigrant, and just the idea of immigration and what that looks like. And yeah, it was fascinating. It was a really, really good read. Then I read this one. Right, okay, so let me grab it. So this is A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch by Sarah Hawley, and it is the second book in the Glimmer Falls, I want to say trilogy, because there's 3 books out at the moment. So the reasons I didn't like this book, 1, are not the book's fault, and 2, are the book's fault. So I originally had this at a 3.5. I've definitely brought it down to a 2.5, and actually I may even bring it to a 2. So let's get into why I did not enjoy this book. First reason, and this is completely a me thing, is that I am not a romance girly, and this is a paranormal romance series, or it could fall into the new class of genre, romantasy. And yeah, I'm just not a romance girly. I don't really enjoy romances. I don't really enjoy even romance subplots in books. In fact, they can often irritate me because I just don't see why almost every book out there has to have a romantic subplot. Not everyone is into romance, and it does, yeah, it gets a bit wearing, especially when often the romance just isn't realistic. I'm talking about in other books. These are obviously romance books, and I thought I would give them a go. I did really enjoy the first book, even with the romance in it, but I did enjoy it enough to then pick up this one. And I kind of wish I hadn't. So basically we're in this world where there's magics and witches and wizards and centaurs and pixies and werewolves and all sorts of magical creatures. And this book follows on directly after the first book, where this demon was trying to take the soul of this witch's best friend. I think I preferred the first book because I just preferred the characters and I preferred the type of magic that was used in it. And in this one, this demon has lost his memory, and we find out why as we go through. And she comes across him in an alleyway with another demon trying to kill him, and she fights off the other demon, and for some inexplicable reason then decides to not only take this demon in and help him recover, but then to not tell her friends that she's doing it. I mean, literally in the first book, this witch hates this demon with a passion. And so to me, this relationship made no sense. I don't like a lot of romance tropes either. This is definitely an enemy to lovers trope. And you have the forced proximity trope, you know, often classified as the one bed, but it's not one bed, but they are forced together. They are sharing a tent and stuff. And I just don't like any of those tropes at all. I particularly dislike enemies to lovers tropes. And so basically they go on this quest to try and find this witch, to try and find out why he's got amnesia, to try and find out what's going on. And all this time she doesn't tell her friends what she's doing, which again makes no sense to me. Honestly, I should know by now. I should have just DNF'd this book. I really should. I'm actually quite good at DNFing books. There's a lot of books in the world, and I don't see the point in often wasting your time with a book you're not enjoying when there's so many more out there that you could. So that aside, the fact that it was a romance, the fact that I didn't like the two main characters, this particular witch, she's portrayed as being fierce and feisty, and that is down to a previous relationship that was not a healthy one. So do read trigger warnings for this. But actually, I just feel like she needs therapy. She is extremely aggressive, and there is a difference in my mind between being fierce and passionate and a strong woman and actually just wanting to get in fights with everyone all the time. And I don't think that was dealt with enough in the book to give me enough satisfaction that she understands that it's an adverse reaction and an unhealthy reaction to a relationship that she's still processing and working through. I don't think enough time was given to that. And I didn't find myself warming to her. I found myself annoyed with how she was portrayed in the book. So the first thing, as I said, that made me dislike this book is the fact that it's a romance, and in particular a trope I do not like. The second thing is the book's fault, is the author's fault, the editor, whoever. And that is, I feel that this book falls into a class of books that is a big thing at the moment. They have cute and cozy covers. They sound like cute and cozy reads. And then all of a sudden, plonked in the middle of the book is some very spicy, explicit scenes. Now, I have no problem with spicy, explicit scenes. I will read them in other kinds of books. That's not the problem. My problem is these are not being, they're not being, what's the word I'm looking for, marketed in the right way. Do not put a cute and cozy cover that literally looks like it could be in an upper child section, you know, young YA, and then put scenes that are very, very explicitly adult. Make the cover reflect what's in the book. Also, they really should start putting certain ratings in books, or at least a warning in the front of the book, because not everyone does want to read that kind of thing. Again, it doesn't bother me, but please make the book portray what is inside it. And my other issue is, I feel like the book is two different books. I feel like there is a cozy book that is being written, and then I feel like there is an adult book that is being written, and they've been jammed together. And for me, it doesn't work. And this is happening a lot at the moment in certain genres of books, where the book is written in one style and then someone just shoves in a load of really spicy, explicit scenes. Now, certain authors are quite good at still making that work. It's still not really something I enjoy, because, you know, either give me a cozy book or a spicy book. They just don't work for me often. And I find myself skipping those scenes. I wish they weren't in the book. If they were taken out, I'm being 100% honest, if those scenes were removed from this book, it would make absolutely no change to the overall story. Like, you wouldn't miss them. They have no purpose in this book other than for someone to go, look at the spicy scene I wrote. And that irritates me. Like, if you're going to write a book, write a good book. And I know that's subjective. I'm not a writer. I never could write a book. So that may sound a little harsh, but I really feel like this particular series of books, as it happened in the first book too, the writer just does not get that balance right. Those scenes have no real place, as far as I'm concerned, in the story. They're not written brilliantly. In fact, some of what happens in them, even though I skim read them, this character, as she's portrayed in the book, would not do certain things in those scenes if that character really was that kind of it's a whole thing. Anyway, it really irritates me that this is a new kind of thing in books where people are just like, isn't this a cute cozy romance, and now look at the spice. And it's like, it doesn't need to be there. If you can remove a whole chunk from a book and it not actually affect the storyline in any way, shape or form, then that should not be in the book. In my opinion, as a reader, I don't like it. So that is why, even as I'm talking, I'm thinking about putting this down to a 2. Firstly, I didn't like any of the main characters. Secondly, I didn't really care about the storyline, because why am I supposed to care about this character when in the whole first book we are supposed to hate him? And there is another character in here who's his mother, who acts more like a 15-year-old child than a thousands and thousands of years old woman. She is so ridiculously childish, and we are supposed to think she's scary and unpredictable and, oh my gosh, she's such a threat. And no, she acts like a 15-year-old, in fact sometimes younger, more like a 12-year-old child, and that didn't ring true to me. So all that to say, I really don't like this new trend that there is with cozy and spicy smushed together in a way that does not work, and that's just my opinion. These books are quite well liked, but I don't know, it's not for me. The storyline wasn't good, didn't like the characters, don't like the writing particularly. I do have the third and final book, and I've heard really good things about that one, and apparently the romance is meant to be more realistic and sweeter. So I don't know guys. I'm really wondering if it's worth me even trying it again, because I really don't particularly like this author's writing style in general, and I have a lot of other books that I would like to read. So anyway, my least favorite book that I read this month, and yeah, I may be moving it down to a 2. It's annoying me. It will not be staying in my house, and I can't remember if I got rid of the first one or not, so I will have to check my bookshelves. So yeah, that is A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch, Sarah Hawley. Don't know if any of you out there are now interested in picking this up, but yeah, that's that one. So the 12th book and almost the final one I read was All Fudged Up by Nancy Coco, and it is first in the Candy Coated Mysteries, book 1. I gave this a 4, which is huge, guys. It's huge because, as I've said, cozy mysteries are not something I normally give above a 3.5. This will be a series I am continuing on with. Nancy, the main character in this, has returned home again after her grandfather has passed away, and she's taking over the family fudge shop. She's always known she's going to take over this shop. He's been getting her ready for it. She went to university to do business management and all this stuff. They live on this tiny island for half the year that has no visitors on it because it's kind of off the mainland and it gets really cold and no one wants to be there. And she's trying to open her candy shop and everyone assumes she's going to sell it. And I really liked her character, although once again, there are 2 men that she's eyeing up, and she keeps talking about the smell of one of them. Oh, he just smells like man. What does that even mean? To me, that normally means that he needs a bath. That's what that tends to mean to me. I used to say to my boys when they were little, you're getting that man smell now, which was a nice way for me to say it's getting to that age where you need deodorant. So I don't know what that means, but anyway, I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed her character. I enjoyed the rest of the town for the most part. Someone's found dead in the candy shop. There's a whole kind of thing about the town considering her a newbie, that she doesn't fit in. And she's like, well, my grandfather, I came and lived here in the summers. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't mean anything. You're new. We don't know you. There seems to be a concerted effort to make sure she cannot open this shop and possibly actually have to sell. There is a mystery linked to prohibition, which was just a little fun historical aspect too. So I really enjoyed that. She gets a little dog gifted to her in the book. Someone thinks this little kind of Bichon Frise can help take care of her and make sure she's safe, and it's a puppy. I mean, it's the cutest thing. I think she ends up calling it Mal for marshmallow. Lots of fudge recipes, which I'm not the biggest fudge fan, but it made me want to eat fudge, so it did its thing. And yeah, it was just a really good mystery. I kind of guessed it, but I still really like the characters in it. And it's definitely one I'm going to be continuing. I already have book 2 that I will be reading in March. I love a good cozy mystery. Often I'll just read the one in a series because often they're a good mystery, they're fine, but I'm not as invested in the characters. Like I said, they're the kind of thing I pick up when I'm poorly or when I just need a bit of a brain self-care day, and I pick up a cozy mystery. But this is a series that I am super invested in at the moment, and so I will be continuing with it. So yeah, to get 4 stars for me is really, really good. Final book, and this one was also for the Forensic February. What one was it for? Oh, Name in the Title. Where was Name in the Title? And it is Cecily. Now, Cecily is a historical fiction, which is one of my favourite genres. Also, can I just say how stunning this cover is? I mean, it is beautiful. This is by Annie Garthwaite. I gave it a 4, and the only reason I gave it a 4 was because I had no emotional connection to the characters, which, you know, is fine. It was beautifully written. There was one thing that sticks in my mind, bearing in mind I was reading this as I was falling really ill. The one that sticks in my mind is there was a scene where they go into France and the people have been starving, and the way she describes it is they wore their bones too close to their skin. I just thought that was beautiful. I thought that summed it up really well. If you don't know, Cecily Neville, here you go. 1431, 8 years ago, Cecily Neville's family gave her in marriage to Richard Plantagenet. So yeah, this is in 1400s, 1431. We see her at the death of Joan of Arc. And Cecily Neville and Richard's father was a traitor. And he is given to Cecily's father to raise, and them to get betrothed at a young age, and then married when they're like, I think she's 16, he's 18 when they get married. And both of them have links to the royal family. So he is considered, if the king at the moment, who is Edward? No, not Edward. Henry VI, I believe. Hold on. Yeah, so the king at the time is a child king, and he is Henry VI. And he has gone down in history as one of the most inefficient kings of England. It is thought now that maybe he had extreme manic depressive, or maybe even schizophrenia. But at the time, all people knew was that he would listen to whoever was in his ear at the time. So he could not be relied on. He could not be trusted. He did not know how to govern. His main focus was prayer and the religious faith. Realistically, he should never have been king. He would have been much happier going to a seminary and becoming a priest. He would have been much happier with that. And basically, this is the story of Cecily and her husband's fight to try and get rid of the people around the king who they feel are making England, is destroying it. They're taking money, they're taking land, they're losing land that was fought in France in the 100 Years' War. There's a lot going on. It's very historical. And it all leads to the War of the Roses, which I don't know how much you guys know about that. But here in the UK, we are basically raised knowing about the War of the Roses from primary school. It's one of the first big historical things we learn. And they are on the side of York against the Lancastrians. And Cecily goes through a lot. There are a lot of trigger warnings in this book, guys. Women lost children quite frequently at this time in history. But Cecily is a woman not to be kept down. And even when her husband, the war starts, the civil war of the War of the Roses that tore the country apart for many, many years, Cecily comes through and she ends up becoming the queen mother of two future kings of England. One of them is Edward IV, I want to say. There's a lot of Edwards, there's a lot of Henrys, there's a lot of everything. Let me have a look. It does say right at the end what happened. Edward defeated... Yeah, he becomes Edward IV on March 1461. He becomes Edward IV. And he is like declared the Sun King. Like there's this whole mythology around him and his brothers where three suns raised in the sky. And this book really runs with that idea that from the moment Edward's born, the sun is linked, fire is linked to him as a person. I will not say that Cecily is a likeable character. I don't think she is. I don't think we're supposed to think of her as likeable. I think we're supposed to see that she was a strong woman who... Her husband recognised her intelligence. She definitely was a tactician and helped him with things. But also on her own right, she knew she had to protect herself and her children. And sometimes that led to her not being the best mother or the best person. And she becomes the mother, the queen mother of Edward IV and then Richard III. So the infamous Richard III, Cecily, is his mother. And she lives through that. She lives until her 80s, which is amazing for a woman, not only of this time, but when you then hear what she went through and how often her life was in danger, especially at one particular point. It was only through the kindness of someone that her and her children survived a particular attack. It's fascinating. It's interesting reading. I know a lot about this time. I've read a lot about this time, but I've never read anything from Cecily's point of view. And this has been a book that's been on my TBR for a little while. TBR means to be read pile. I love the colour. I picked it up reduced anyway, and the cover was just stunning. So, you know, that worked in its favour. And I love historical fiction. It's one of my favourite genres to read. So if you are interested in English history, if you are interested in the War of the Roses, if you are interested in history being told from the woman's point of view, not just the men's, I do recommend this book. I think it is well written. I will definitely read something by Annie Garthwaite again. And it's definitely made me want to go to some of the places mentioned in here that Cecily helped build, and things like that. I mean, it's just a bit sad because obviously we know then what happens to her sons. And one of them, George, Duke of Clarence, what happens to him is it's infamous in English history. And if you go to the Tower of London, it's one of the things you will be taught about when you go there. And yeah, that's all a bit sad. And we meet Marguerite of Anjou, who is Henry VI's wife. She's the French girl, niece of the French king, who comes over to be married to Henry. They do have one child together. There is speculation whether that ever was Henry's child, because it took 8 years for her to fall pregnant. And then, to be honest, they were never really together. But who knows? We can't go back and do DNA. And so that's really interesting, seeing things from Marguerite's point of view. Yeah, it's a fascinating period of history. It's something that, like I said, we know a lot about. Being raised in the UK, you know a lot about the War of the Roses. And it's still to this day, there is a rivalry between York and Lancaster, the white and the red roses. There is still this thing that goes all the way back to the War of the Roses in 14 whatever. So that's fascinating. So that's all the books I read, guys. I read 13 books, took part in Forensic February. There was only one book I didn't get to complete this, and that's because I thought it fell ill. Least favourite book, without a doubt, Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch. I really think I am going to move it to a 2. It irritated me. I don't want to pick up the next book, even though I've heard great things about it, but I have it, so I have to make a decision about that. Best books that I read were The Good Immigrant by Nikesh Shukla, and also it would be a toss-up between Silence Fallen by Patricia Briggs and I Shall Wear Midnight by Discworld. I Shall Wear Midnight did get 5 and Silence Fallen only got 4.5. Either way, I love both of those books. They're part of a series I love. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was very long. I've tried to keep it as condensed as possible. I could talk forever about books. I hope you enjoyed this. I will be doing another one for March. I just want to share with you my love of books, guys. This is a crafting channel. It's not going to change. It will always be a crafting channel. And we got some crafting done, some stamped images that I can use in future projects. But I also just want to share my books with you, and it's my channel. So that's what I'm going to do. The algorithm will hate it, but I really just want to do it, and it's something a bit different. So I know not everyone will watch these videos. They're very, very long. But hopefully those of you that do did enjoy it. Leave me in the, so that I know you got all the way through, leave me a white rose down below, or a rose. Either way, leave a rose down below for the War of the Roses. So I know you got all the way through. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I do hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books, or if any of them are now sounding interesting, you want to pick them up. And I would love to know what your favourite read in February was. As I said, I'll be back again very soon, actually. At the end of March, start of April, with my March wrap up. So keep an eye out for that. Please do like, subscribe and comment down below. I really do appreciate it. And wherever you are in the world, guys, I hope you're having lots and lots of reading fun. Bye for now.